Good morning to all and welcome to the session, the Hindu Editorial Analysis for Proficiency in English. Before we go to the editorial analysis, let us have a quick look at enrichment from this session. Enrichment, you're going to learn about 10 to 12 effective words and about 5 to 6 familiar words. Then you are going to improve your comprehension skill related to economy, world economy, and you're going to consolidate your grammar knowledge. Besides, you're going to learn effective English, a few idioms, one or two idioms are there, and also, as usual, mini mocks. Let us start the session. Before we go to the actual session, let us ask the question: what is this editorial about? This editorial discusses the current state of global economy. As I said, today's editorial, an important editorial because it is related to economy, not Indian economy, world economy, global economy, as assessed by two organizations, by both the IMF and the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Here at the outset, you have to recollect both and not both as usual. What is the tone of the editorial? The tone of the editorial is sober and urgent. In this context, sober means serious. When we go to the editorial vocabulary, I will tell the other meaning of the word sober. But in this context, it means something like serious, urgent, to be considered serious. Excuse me. Let us go to editorial vocabulary. Discuss about is not correct. Very good, Adi Lakshmi. The very first word, sober. Sober, part of speech, adjective. One meaning of the word sober, someone after drinking does not get intoxicated, then we say sober, means calm and cool, under control, within control. But in this context, sober means creating a more serious, sensible mood. Serious mood, sensible, not exactly sensible. In this context, a serious mood. Spectre has got two or three meanings. One meaning, part of speech noun, something widely feared as possible, unpleasant or dangerous occurrence. You feel something widely, a lot of people believe something unpleasant is going to happen. Then we use the word spectre. Spectre also means there's another word you have to know. Generally, spectre means ghost. But in this context, something a lot of people fear going to happen, something unpleasant. And debilitate, part of speech verb, ing form used as an adjective, debilitating, meaning making someone or something weak. Gradually, slowly, someone or something becomes weak. We use the word debilitating, an important word. Undergirding, we got this last week, I suppose. Do you guys remember? Undergirding. Girding, we got the word. Girding, part of speech verb. Undergirding, to form the basis or foundation of something. Something acts as the basis or foundation, that is known as undergirding. And scar, you all know it goes with make someone feeble. Very good. Fine learners. Feeble also means weak. Scar, usually, there's one word here, scar. Imagine after an accident, you get bruises. After some time, these bruises disappear, but there's a black mark that is known as scar. In fact, there is a movie also called Scarface from the Hollywood. But here, scarring has a different connotation altogether. A lasting after effect of trouble. Lasting means exist for a long time. After effect of trouble. Some trouble, after that lasting effect or impact. Blemish also you can say. Very good. Divya. Blemish, bulge, pit. Pit has a different meaning. Worse, part of speech noun. What does it mean? Things that cause sorrow or distress, troubles. He had to face a lot of worse, means what? A lot of problems, hardships, troubles. Part of speech, obviously, noun. Ever, part of speech, verb. To say that something is certainly true. You say something is true with a lot of firmness or conviction. Ever. It is also a regular verb. Then we have avert. Avert, averted, averted. This is also a regular verb. To prevent something bad from happening. Prevent, avert the danger, means prevent the danger. Imperative, it goes with grammar, grammatical term, but here part of speech adjective, absolutely necessary or required. Something is imperative, means something is required. And we have ill effort, an important expression, idiomatic expression. This is the idiom I was talking about. Ill effort means something will cause problems for you if you do that. If you do something, you will face a lot of problems. Then usually we say, imagine you don't have enough money to buy something. Then you say, I can't afford. This goes with the financial aspect. But I can't afford has another meaning. Imagine I want to say something against the management. If I say that, I may get affected. Then I say, I can't afford to say something like that. I can't afford to do something like that. Ill afford, you do something, you have to face the problems. You have to face the music. They can ill afford, they can't ill afford. Adverbs we have got so many times, it should be at your fingertips. Means what? Part of speech adjective. Having a negative or harmful effect on something. Negative. Usually I say adverse. Adverse goes with report. At the time of the passport verification, the police report adverse means what? Negative. Here, adverse report means what? Negative report. These are the words from today's editorial, but besides these words, we have some more words. I haven't brought the meanings because we have got so many times. Already, you know those words. Let us see how it starts. Sobering assessment. Assess something, evaluate something. Sobering means serious in this context, not nothing to do with drinks or intoxication. A serious situation. On the IMF forecast, again you have to become alert and recollect all the verbs forecast, cast, cost, telecast, broadcast, and also heard. They have the same form. If you take this example, last week also we got this forecast, forecast, forecast. All the three same. And other verbs you have to recollect cast, cost, telecast, broadcast, and heard. On the IMF forecast, World Bank report, two organizations are involved. But what is the main idea of this editorial? The richer nations must show more support for the poorest countries. Here it is in the comparative form, here it is in the superlative form. The richer nations must. Must we have got so many times. One, it is used to express personal obligation. Obligation imposed by the writer in this context or by the editorial in this context. And the other one, to convey the idea something is compulsory. Here it is a obligation imposed by the editorial. The richer nation must show more support. We can also say must give more support for the poorest countries. Show for the poorest countries. Give to the poorest countries. That also you have to recollect. But in this context, you have to think of, though it may take some time, when we talk about countries, we use certain expressions. First world, second world. India is known as third world country. What exactly do they mean? First world means industrially developed capitalist countries. Second world, industrially developed communist countries. Third world, developing or underdeveloped socialist countries. India is a third world country. This is one thing you have to know. We also use expressions like haves and have nots. No apostrophe. Haves and have nots. Haves means the rich people, rich countries, and have nots, poor countries. Here again, when we refer to rich countries or rich economies and societies, we use the word affluent countries, affluent societies. Extremely, on the other end, extremely poor, we use the word destitution. All these words go with this context. The global economy has avoided the specter of In this context, specter means something that people fear may happen, something very bad or negative. Apprehension, you can also recollect the word, but the literal meaning of the word specter means what? Ghost. The global economy, it is all about the global economy. The global economy has avoided, here it is in present perfect tense, active voice, the specter of a debilitating recession. There are two words here: debilitating, making someone gradually weak, someone or something weak, debilitating impact. But another important word, today we talk about recession. And right now, because of recession in the IT sector, thousands of jobs, employees are they are losing their jobs. Recession means a low economic activity, low economic activity, a recession. Obviously, recession makes the economies weak. The global economy has avoided the specter, impending threat of a debilitating recession. With the IMF last week raising its forecast, again, you have to become alert. I'm sure you guys know a rise, a rose, a risen. After a long time, I'm writing irregular verb, intransitive verb. A raise, a raised, a raised. Transitive, and this is not the bilingual. 7 o'clock you have to attend. Who is this? Venkat Ramana Nayak. 7 o'clock there's another session bilingual. There I use Telugu. Not this is only English. There are two sessions: 6:30 to 7 purely English, 7 to 8 bilingual English and Telugu. Attend that session. With IMF last week raising its forecast, raising what? Ask the question. Its forecast. This is the object. If there's an object, it's a transitive verb and a regular verb. With the IMF last week raising its forecast for worldwide aggregate growth in 2024 to 3.2% from the 2.9% it had projected in October. October last year, first time it projected. First action, we have to use past perfect. And second action, we have to use present, second action, past tense. Good, you responded. It had projected first action past perfect, second action past tense. Obviously, there's an increase 2.9% to 3.2%. The IMF has underlined, again, we have present perfect tense active voice, the fact that the global economy has, with surprising resilience, ridden out several adverse shocks. Here we have in every phrase a present perfect. Has underlined means has emphasized the fact that the global economy has ridden again present perfect active voice. But here there is a phrase with surprising resilience. Resilience we have got many a time. You people should have resilient nature. What does it mean? While preparing for competitive exams, you may face ups and downs. You should never give up, and you have to continue your preparation. Then we say, after facing a lot of problems, you emerge victorious. We say resilient nature. With surprising resilience, that means it withstood all the adverse impacts, ridden out several adverse shocks, negative shocks, as well as you have to recollect important rules. There are about 10 to 15 I usually teach. Due to lack of time, I will mention four: as well as, with, together with, along with. The verb agrees with the first subject. Adverse shocks as well as significant central bank interest rate increases aimed at restoring price stability. Adverse impacts and also central bank interest rate increases aimed at restoring price stability. It could withstand and sustained. Sustain also we have got many a time. It has two or three meanings. One meaning sustain in this context means to maintain. And we all know sustainable goals, sustainable practices I will use. Means what? You use the resources in such a way that the future generations can also access, or sustainable goals, sustainable practices, use the resources wisely without exploiting completely. Sustained the growth momentum. Some growth, it maintained that growth momentum. How? Largely on the back of advanced economies led by the US, undergirding demand. The momentum has been retained. How? On the back of advanced economies like led by the US, undergirding demand, the foundation, so much demand over there. Based on that, the momentum continued. Contrasting information, however, the fund has also pointed, present perfect active voice, has also pointed to, takes a preposition to, a growing gulf between the economic north and south by observing. This particular report has pointed to a particular thing, rather disturbing trend. What is it? Growing gulf. In this context, gulf means gap. Usually, the rich become the richer, the poor become the poorer. This goes more or less with that trend. However, the fund has also pointed to a growing gap or gulf between the economic north and south by observing a troubling development is a widening divergence or widening gap between many low income developing countries and the rest of the world. Widening divergence or widening gap between, on the one hand, low income developing countries, on the other hand, the rest of the world. And these low income developing countries, what are the features? For these economies, growth is revised downward. It has predicted something positive. But when it comes to low income developing countries, the growth is revised downward, whereas inflation is revised up. Two trends, growth downwards and inflation upwards. This goes with low income developing countries. Obviously, these are very poor countries. These are poorest countries in Africa and including some Latin American, Pacific Island, and Asian nations had also, past perfect, had also suffered the most scarring from the COVID 19 pandemic in terms of estimated drop in output relative to pre pandemic projections and were struggling to recover. Why are these countries not able to recover? Impact of the COVID. The sentence talks about when it comes to low income developing countries, the projection revised downward growth and upward inflation. One of the reasons, and where are these poor countries, all these regions, and what is the reason behind the scarring from the most scarring means the impact in this context. The impact from of the COVID 19 pandemic in terms of estimated drop in output relative to pre-pandemic projections. Pre-pandemic projections could not meet the goals because of the impact, negative impact of the pandemic, and were struggling to recover. They could not recover, struggling to recover. To compound their woes, an important expression. Compound means to add up. Already we have got many a time, so I haven't brought. Compound woes means sufferings, problems, hardships. To compound their woes, these economies were now saddled with a mounting debt. There are two words again I haven't brought because we have got many a time. Saddle goes with a horse. If you take a horse, on the horse back, we put something and on that we sit. That is called saddle. In a way, mounting. You put something on. Here, economies were now saddled with a mounting debt. Be silent. Debt is being piled up, getting piled up. Mounting debt service burden that was severely impairing their ability to spend on vitally needed public goods, including better education, healthcare, and social nets to improve food security. Because of this mounting debt, they are saddled with mounting debt, means they are burdened with the mounting debt. They're not able to spend on important things, vitally needed public goods, including education, better education, healthcare, and social nets to improve food security. The IMF's twin development lender, the World Bank, has, in a separate report, pointed out, again, present perfect tense, active voice. Here, there's one important word, has been given more than 10 or 15 times in different competitive exams. Separate, common error, a lot of people think This is a spelling. No, the spelling is separate. A should be there, not E. A separate has in a separate report pointed out that for the first time, ordinal numbers we have to use a definite article. Very good, Anusha. In this century, half of the world's 75 poorest countries were experiencing a widening income gap with the wealthiest economies. Half of the world's 75 poorest countries were experiencing a widening income gulf with the wealthiest economies, making a historic reversal of development. Because of that, there's something like a reversal of development. As the World Bank Group's chief economist Indermit Gill observed in a blog post on the lender's site, the 75 poorest countries are home to a quarter of humanity. This is equivalent to a quarter of humanity, that is 1.9 billion people, and are home to 90% of people facing hunger or malnutrition. If you look at this chunk, 75 poorest countries, they amount to quarter of humanity, that is 1.9 billion people, and also home to 90% of people facing two problems, either hunger problem or malnutrition, means they don't get nutritious food. More distressingly, distress, a feeling of anxiety or worry or loss of hope. More distressingly, while these countries were midway through what he termed potentially a lost decade they are going through, Mr. Gill averred, stated firmly that the rest of the world was largely averting, preventing its gaze. Means what? Some countries are very poor, they are suffering a lot, and rich countries are not trying to do something about that particular situation in those countries. They're trying to averting means of preventing its gaze. Gaze means a look for a long time. Even as the governments in at least half these nations were mostly paralyzed by debt distress. What it means, it begins with the rich countries should help the poor countries. To substantiate that, here it talks about the fact. What is the fact? So many countries are suffering a lot because of debt burden. But the rich countries, the wealthiest economies, they're avoiding to look at those countries. And these countries, if you look at these poor countries, many governments in at least half of these nations were mostly paralyzed by debt distress. Mounting debt, they cannot do anything. It's like paralysis. Quoting the examples of South Korea, China, and India as countries that had transitioned, means a changed. Transition means a change. Had transition means a past perfect tense. From being borrowers of low interest loans from the World Bank's International Development Association into economic powerhouses. Three countries initially would borrow at low interest from the World Bank's International Development Association, but today they have become economic powerhouses. What are the three countries? One, South Korea, second, China, and third, India. Into economic powerhouses that were today IDA donors. The bank's chief economist is stressed. After stress, we should not use on. Here you have to recollect other verbs. Already someone has discussed about wrong. Order for wrong. And inform to wrong. You have to recollect. Stressed, it was imperative, important, vital, urgent situation demands that the world's richer countries financially support the poorest countries. Main idea is being reiterated. Given that the world needs to tap every reserve of economic potential to achieve universal peace and prosperity, it can ill afford to turn its back on a quarter of its people. Turn your back means not to support, ignore. Given that the world needs to tap every reserve of economic potential, rich countries that have excess, they have to use it, contribute towards the development of the poor countries. But instead of that, they try to turn their back. Turn your back means what? Not to support or ignore. It can ill afford means if it does it, the impact is going to be negative. to turn its back on a quarter of its people, one fourth. It cannot do it. If it does, if it ignores or turns its back, obviously the impact is going to be devastating. That's all about today's editorial. Join at 7:30. You can work on mini mocks. Today, I'm sorry to say, today I haven't brought the mini mocks. Today, don't join. Please don't join at 7:30. No mini mocks because I had to change the design. I had to spend a lot of time on this. And today, before I wind up the session, please listen to me. I have launched this course has been there cyclic English course. Existing foundation course has been changed to cyclic English course. What is the syllabus? After the session, I'll provide the PDF. Have a look. Grammar, these are the topics. Comprehension, these are the topics. Vocabulary, these are the topics. And when you join the cyclic English course, the best foundation course, what are the benefits? Anytime, anywhere you can join because cyclic in nature. Instant access to PDFs, instant access to topic wise exercises, instant access to live sessions, instant access to fodder material, important topics useful for mains, instant access to recorded videos, and instant access to Hindu RCs and vocabulary PDFs, instant access to mini mocks PDFs, and instant access to special live sessions. Duration 2 months, but cyclic in nature. Time slot 6 p.m. Monday to Friday. Course fee actually 3,000, discount 500, 2,500. Validity is 6 months. In 6 months, every 2 months, again, the same cycle gets repeated. That means you get a chance to listen to the live session 3 times. Cyclic in nature, you can join anytime. Thanks for, and live classes plus recorded videos. That is the best part of it. Thank you very much. Do remember to subscribe and share. And I will see you guys.